The start of Canada as a nation would begin in 1867 with the British North America Act, an act that would combine the province of Canada, along with New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, into a single nation. There were several factors that brought along this need for confederation, namely being self-governance, their own economy, as well as encroaching expansion from the south. Of course, there was a very important group that was excluded from discussions regarding confederation, and that, of course, was the group of people who had been there for several thousands of years prior. Not only were indigenous peoples not included or welcome to the discussions regarding negotiations towards the formation of this new country, the formation of the new country itself included legislation that would place control over these people into the hands of the government itself, deeming it their responsibility. Naturally, of course, they included no legal definition for the people that they were ruling over in any case. Of course, all this was considered a-okay with the Vatican, so long as there were no Christians residing in the area. In that case, the lands were considered empty. This weekly Sioux Finders Keepers policy was used also in Africa and India itself. Further westward expansion of Canada was encouraged after the discovery of Palliser's Triangle, a fertile belt that lied to the west which could make for a breadbasket for the rest of the country. The main problem with this expansion, however, was that these lands were still by far a vast majority of indigenous populations rather than the expanding powers, and John A. Macdonald wanted to move these populations onto smaller reserves to keep them out of the way of future development. This was meant to be a temporary solution, but of course still persists to the present day. This would result in the infamous sale of Rupert's Land to Canada through the Hudson's Bay Company via the Deed of Surrender, the land of which Hudson's Bay Company had no actual land claim to. They were only given license to operate in the area, and oh my gosh, you'll never believe who was considered in the negotiation. It's nigh impossible to impress just the vast area of land that was sold and how little it was sold for. It was essentially a fire sale from the Hudson's Bay Company as the fur trade was in its decline. Thankfully, there was some resistance to this sale before it happened in proper, beginning in 1869 with Louis Riel leading the Red River Resistance after William McDougall, an infamous expansionist, was tasked to resurvey the area of Manitoba, with Métis resisting as land surveyors encroached onto their farms. Their resistance paid off to an extent with the formation of Manitoba in 1870 with the Manitoba Act. Ultimately, the post-stamp province of Manitoba was more of a small victory than anything else, with no amnesty being granted to the leaders of the Red River Resistance, and the land divisions that were afforded to the Métis were not exactly in desirable locations, with many of them not even residing in Manitoba. Needless to say, the formation of Canada as we know it was not instantaneous, but little bit by little bit, these ancestral lands of which the people had called home for thousands of years would be taken away one by one.